Hey, everybody. Good to see you. I'm here with my good friend today, Tom Kaps with Flock Free. Most of you guys know me from the podcast, but my podcast, 52 Sessions, has a goal of interviewing, talking to, communicating with as many pest control professionals, business professionals, academia as possible who are interested in the concept of continuing to drive innovation in pest control. We do that largely through sustainable solutions that we believe are good for the customer, but also good for the environment and good for the animal that we're trying to remove from that environment. So very excited today to have Mr. Tom Kaps, the owner of Flock Free. Tom, you've been around the industry for a while. I think most people know you largely as one of the best bird experts possibly in the world, but definitely in the United States. And your company does not only the bird work itself, but also produces sustainable solutions and innovative solutions. So you want to take maybe 30 seconds or a minute and give our audience a brief introduction of who you are and what you guys do?
Sure. My company's been around for about 20 odd years. Started out as never thought I'd be in the bird control business. I was a parking lot sweeper and kind of got dragged into bird control. When you're a parking lot sweeper, you don't make a lot of money sweeping parking lots. You make money on ancillary services. So, when you had 4 young daughters at the time, anything they wanted me to do, I would do. And weirdly enough, we started getting calls about bird control. So we started doing bird control work. And 20 years later, we've innovated, learned, been there. So now I guess I am sort of an expert at it. So it's been a fun journey so far.
Well, yeah, it's been an impressive journey. I've only known you now for probably 3 years or so, but watching what you do and watching the way you do it has taught me quite a bit. And I was really excited to get the opportunity to talk to you today and hopefully share some of your wisdom with our audience. So, we talked about it before, but you're a pioneer in the pest control industry, and you've been doing that for a handful of years now through Flock Free. Tom, tell me, how have you seen the demand evolve for more sustainable and science-based solutions, and how is Flock Free specifically responding to that?
Well, yeah. So when I first started doing bird control, everything was about static solutions, netting, spiking, shock tracking only. And these solutions they still do have their place in the industry, but they're expensive and they don't solve total problems at many facilities. They just move birds from one area to another. So we wanted to come up with a bird control program. And a program is how we treat an entire facility. So we have success over the entire facility, not just part of it. That was the idea.
And what are you seeing from the client side right now? You have a nice group of clients. I think a lot of people come to you for solutions with regards to the demand specifically for more sustainable solutions. What are you seeing in the industry right now?
So the industry, B2B has been built on these guys are looking to build routes. Everybody's building routes, and that's how they build the value of their company. And then they sell their company, and that's how they basically grow their businesses, by routes. Bird control turned into a problem a few years ago because they would interfere with the routes. Everything was like I said before, it was a netting job or something that needed 3 guys to go do it, taking guys away from routes. Most pest control companies don't have guys just sitting around waiting for bird jobs to come in. So I kind of took a look at that, and there's easy ways of doing bird work. So that's what I came up with. Came up with a simple way of teaching guys to get into bird work, teaching them the basic concepts of it. We like to teach birds to stay away instead of, keeping them out of a place, put a net up and keep them out. Birds have all day to pick, poke, and prod. So if you use their own, curiosity against them a little bit, you can actually teach them to move and not harm them. So it works great.
And are you seeing, do you have clients that are asking for that? I know back 50 years ago, it was no big deal to take a shotgun and fire it off, but now that doesn't really work. I mean, I can tell you that at Symterra, we definitely have tried to position ourselves as the go-to for the humane solution. Even recently we got rid of the shock part of our system, even though it's a signal-based system. And we did that because clients basically told us right now, over the last couple of years, hey, we will pay more if you can get rid of the bird. In your scenario, teach the bird not to come back without hurting the bird or without having an impact on the local environment. Are you seeing that when you're going out and bidding jobs and doing jobs?
Oh, yes, especially with the younger generation. They really care about the animals, which is great. We always have too. We've never done anything to hurt a bird. We've always had this idea of teaching them to stay away because they're really smart and you can do it. If you take a basic principle, a visual with a consequence, you can move birds without hurting them. And it actually becomes more affordable for the customer. And it makes sense, especially if you have a larger facility. You can actually teach birds to stay away from larger areas,
Yeah. Yeah. I also like what you said about how bird control doesn't fall within the traditional paradigm of pest control. I own pest control companies. I know that to be true. And for a period of time early on in my life, I actually just said, we're not going to do bird control because I couldn't figure it out within a route, right? I couldn't figure out a way to create a solution where it wasn't temporary, where the birds didn't come back, and it's expensive. So the customers would get really mad at me about that. I interviewed Dr. Steve Tanis from Aculio a couple of weeks ago, and he mentioned the same thing. He said that in his opinion, birds and bees have to be handled so differently that you really have to convince the pest control community to invest in the training, in the education, in the understanding of it, so that they can essentially set aside resources to go capture that business, which is readily available, but not unless you're going after it or you understand how to do it. Would you agree with that?
Yes, that's what I spend all my time doing now, is I teach people how to do pest control, well, specifically bird control, using multiple consequences to multiple visuals. And you mix and match what the customer can afford and what they need. And it works really well. And it's easier to sell because a lot of people we deal with now are disgruntled people who have had several different attempts made by different companies. And a lot of stuff that was tried before, after I hear, it's like, oh my God, no wonder they're kind of upset. But those are my easiest customers, because if you just tell people the truth about what you're going to do and what you can expect and what the long-term vision that you have, and you make them partners in it, it works so much easier. It's very easy to do if you do it the right way.
Well, I think that's a good segue then into my next question. So when I first met you, we had just come to market. We were with Flock Off at that point in time. That was our first ideation of this company. And, we had gone from basically working out of Tucson to being international within 6 months. And we quite frankly weren't expecting that. We're very happy that it happened, but we definitely weren't ready for it or expecting it. And one of the first phone calls I got, one of the first visits I got was from you. Yeah. And I don't know if you remember sitting down with me in Tucson, Arizona at that point in time, but you said, hey, look, in my opinion, John, there is no silver bullet. Do you remember that conversation?
I remember sitting at the table with a bunch of really highly motivated people who had a great new product, and they were so gung-ho, and I was just trying to temper them a little bit, because through experience, I know that you're going to run into stuff that you may have to add a couple things, but you guys, good people. So it was, you guys ran with it. You're doing great. And now we're actually starting to come into, you've had enough experience now that we've figured out, hey, we can add a couple things here and there, tweak it a little bit. And so
yeah, so let's talk about it, because one of the things I admire most about you is your creativity. And you know what? It did take me. I love Symterra. I think Symterra does the heavy lift, right? I mean, we're signal based. I think we can create massive reductions in birds. But there is some times and places where our system either financially doesn't make sense, or because we're signal based, it can't work, right? So small little crevices and stuff like that. And you were the first purchaser of our system who came in and partnered it with other flock-free products. And one of the things that we noticed internally, that motivated group, as we were watching you, is we were like, man, his customers just seem to be happier, and those installs get done better. And we have basically the best results that we had or have came from you. And you didn't really tell us a whole lot about the extra stuff you were doing until we just asked, hey, Tom, why do you get better results than everybody else? And it ended up being that you were taking a more holistic approach. And I think that's important as we talk about innovation and sustainable solutions for customers, that we understand that it is a barrage or a combination of multiple solutions based off of the structure, based off of the bird, based off of the customer, the wants and demands. So can you talk a little bit about maybe where your mindset is at Flock Free, or where your mindset is as a pioneer in this industry with regards to partnerships with companies like mine or other companies to create the best possible outcome for the customer?
Sure. So we've run into quite a bit of resistance, because when I first started doing bird control, I didn't have a lot of credibility. I was a parking lot sweeper, and all of a sudden I'm doing bird control work. And I was working alongside and sometimes against other, major pest control companies. They kind of resented me. So for a while, there was some resentment that I was getting results and they weren't. And then after a while, we really don't do bird work anymore for ourselves. We're mostly now teaching and selling products and, helping other people. And over the years now, we've just shown people, hey, look, if you have a visual and multiple consequences, the multiple consequences can be my products or other people's products. So if your product does something unique and different, it sort of has a visual and it does what it does, and we just add to it. Every facility is different. Some are gigantic. There's budgetary constraints. There's operation managers have their own opinions. You have people competing with you, giving their opinions on things. So we just try to keep the message very simple, and we're getting a lot of positive, a lot of results on it because people want to hear the truth. They don't want to hear the $300,000 net is going to solve the problem. The birds are there for a reason. You have to identify why the birds are there. How do you get them to leave? And typically it's visual, multiple consequences, and then constant pressure. So you're always there month after month. Bird control used to be considered, you go in, do it, and get out. Well, you really have to be there on a monthly basis almost. Take care of the initial install has to be taken care of, and then usually you have to do some other things. And if you're there month to month like you do with any other pest, the success follows.
Yeah, absolutely. Very, very good advice. Let me ask you this: as a pioneer and somebody who creates a lot of the solutions right now, I know Flock Free has your UV paint, and you've got multiple other products that you're in market with and bringing products to market. You're obviously doing that because you see some holes in the market and some possible blind spots in the market. Where do you think that, with regards to the next generation of pest control technology, what are some of those key challenges or blind spots that you believe our industry needs to address? And how can innovators like Flock Free or Symterra, in your opinion, make those changes come true?
Well, first of all, get a good partner if you have one, because my partner will try anything, which is very important. So we're open to trying different things. So if I could come up with a crazy idea, my partner Paul is all about trying it. So that's important. Truthfully, the main thing is that bird control can be done humanely, safely, and it's just a matter of using the birds. Whatever the bird does is, why are they there? And you figure out why they're there. Take that away. Come up with multiple consequences. If you mix and match things and are there all the time, it'll work. And that's been the big difference. Everybody else typically wants this spike. They want to gel. They want to do one thing, not the, you have to do bird control has to become a program. If you treat it as a program, you'll have success. It can't just be one thing. I can have a Starbucks sign or a Dunkin' Donuts sign, right? It doesn't matter what sign. If I just treat the sign, many times the birds will move to a different location on that building. Did we really succeed? No, we just moved them. So we don't want to move birds on the same property. We want to kick them out nicely. And that's what it is. You have to have a program, sell it as a program, treat it as a program, multiple solutions, and then you'll have success. That's something new that people are just starting out to do a little bit.
I love it. I love it. I'm going to make sure that all of our viewers have your information, because I would highly recommend that they go to you if they want that teaching, that education to help drive their business. You talked about, why are the birds there? The birds are there largely because of humans. I've said this before, but there's a joke, and at least in my circle, it talks about humans are the world's biggest pests. It's really important that people understand that birds are not pests, right? Just in general, they're not pests. They're pests when there's too many of them in an area where they shouldn't be, right? And that's almost always created, and you know this, but it's almost always created because humans have created some type of structure or food or shelter or water supply, right? That makes the bird actually think, hey, this is actually a better spot to go to than that tree where nature wanted me to go to, right? And when the bird becomes overpopulated, it's because they're mating more, which is because they have more food and shelter and space and safety. And it's only when they become overpopulated that they actually become a pest. So I've said this before, but I agree with you 100%. Humans created this problem, and we live in 2025, right? That we should also be able to solve this problem. And we should be able to solve this problem by reducing the bird population without actually hurting the birds, right? If you take away those structures, if you take away those food sources, they stop mating. And then next thing you know, bird population gets back to where it should be. Because I like listening to the birds, Tom. I like watching the birds. I just don't like the birds on my buildings, crapping all over the place and stopping my restaurant from being able to generate business, right? Or get a bad review. So I do believe that we have a very serious responsibility to address this, but to do it in a humane way, because we created the problem.
Yeah, I agree. We've never ever been about hurting birds. It's always about moving them, teaching them, and that's what's so fun about what I do. We actually solve people's problems, and you're right. People cause the problem. I mean, seagulls used to be migratory. Can you imagine that? Now those food sources don't need to migrate anymore. So we have changed the planet and the way birds interact with us. So we can teach them, we can move them. It can be done. Just have to open your eyes and listen. You listen to the birds. They tell you what they want and don't want. So it's actually very simple if you take the approach of take away what they want, make them a little uncomfortable on a constant basis. They will move elsewhere. It can be done.
Well, I really like your comment earlier too about although we all want that instant gratification, the longer the bird's been there, the longer it's going to take to get rid of that bird, and probably the more solutions and the more partnerships it's going to take. And in my opinion, between companies like Symterra and the products that you guys offer at Flock Free, the science is there. I just think it's a matter of putting it all together and creating the outcome that the client needs to get to the level that they deem to be successful.
Exactly. I always kid with guys. I said, you're trying to remove resident birds from a building. How hard would it be for me to get you out of your house? What would I have to do to move you out of your house, or even keep you out of your refrigerator? So if you think of it that way, it's a little bit of work involved, but it can definitely be done. We've done it so many times now, and I enjoy just telling people the truth, because what we teach is the truth. It works, and it's very simple when you tell people the truth.
Yeah, and throw another little mix in there. You get into heavy bird pressure season or nesting season. How hard would it be to remove you from your house if your child was in there?
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
Because as you and I both know, the way you approach things and the way the bird responds is dramatically different when it's just perching or loafing versus actually nesting. And then you got to bring into the mix what type of bird are you dealing with?
Yeah,
So,
we stress that all the time. But a lot of times, unfortunately, what happens is guys that are new to bird control will get a call after the nesting has begun. Like, oh, we've got some seagulls on the roof. There's 10 nests. Well, you're kind of done unless you get a federal permit and you start doing oiling the eggs or do what they do. But we teach people, hey, look, you can kind of control what's going on now, but you have to wait till the nesting season's over, and then we can prepare the rest of the year for next year, and then we can cut that down and cut it out. So we preach that all the time. And once the nests are there, it gets very messy. You don't want to mess with those babies,
Yeah, well, amen. And seagulls, that's one of the biggest birds we protect against at Symterra. They're super sensitive to our signal, and you're right. We got to get ahead of it. We got to create a scenario where that seagull who is used to coming back to that same location year after year after year after year, all of a sudden comes back with their same migratory behaviors and habits, ready to be carried out, and is like, holy cow, this is not the same place that I used to go to. This isn't the place that my parents went to and my grandparents went to, and I got to go find another spot. And if you can create that level of success over months, typically prior to the nesting season, like you said, you can create generational success where the seagulls just remember internally, or the bird remembers internally, that place is off limits.
Yeah, and that's what happens. People will get a job. They're so eager to take the job, they'll take a job at the wrong time. So if there's a heavy nesting population on a roof, it doesn't matter what type of bird it is or what the scenario, the birds are there nesting already. So try to get in there and remove those nests and solve that problem immediately is virtually impossible. And it's kind of cruel because you're hurting the birds, you're hurting the nesting, the whole bit. So there's a way of doing it. They said, let the nesting take, you can mitigate the damage of what they're doing through several treatments without hurting them, let them go through their cycle, and then prepare for the next year. And that's the right way of doing it.
Yeah. And so many of these scenarios too, those birds are not protected. So it's not even a question of like, is it right or is it wrong? It's illegal, and so if you're touching the bird, I'll go back to the concept of like, we drive the signal concept. We just try to create a distortion where it scares the bird and the bird decides I'm going to go somewhere else. But if you actually physically touch the bird in those scenarios, I mean, you can be fined thousands of dollars.
Yes. Yeah. That's part of what we do. We teach people to do it humanely, the correct way. Follow all the rules in your state. Every state is different. Every scenario is different. So that's part of the teaching that we do. And it's actually, for us, it's a lot of fun to teach people to do things the right way. And then when they have success, it's like everybody wins. And that's a good story.
Yeah.
So
2 more quick questions for you, and then I'm gonna let you go on with your day. From your experience, what type of clients or sites benefit the most when companies like Symterra or Flock Free, or just multiple companies, are able to come together? What type of clients specifically are you seeing that need those types of solutions?
So we see a lot of restaurants, that type of place, because they build these beautiful, everything they do is science-based, right? The color of the restaurant, how they're set up, everything's based to draw people in, then birds come and start pooping on it. So that's a big clientele for us. Any kind of a food processing plant, anything where food's involved, there's loading dock doors, that becomes a nightmare, because sometimes they need to get rid of a whole pallet of food if there's one drop in one. So food places, we see parking garages. It's really, what's amazing is I get calls from every type of industry across the country. Sometimes I'm surprised who calls me, but literally every type of business has bird control issues. And it just depends on how it impacts them financially as to what they're willing to do to mitigate the situation. So thankfully, we have solutions like yours and ours. We can, if they have a little bigger budget, we can offer them a certain thing. If it's a small job, we have things for that. So it's really interesting to me what comes across the table. Multiple businesses across the board.
Is there any type of opportunity you wouldn't take on?
So I haven't run into anything. So we've been offered, you have shotguns to go in the middle of the night and shoot things and kill things and trap things and, do that. We turn anything that harms a bird away. Anything else, we come and try to help. Even if it's not an instantaneous thing, we at least, at the very least, we'll educate about what can be done after nesting. But we haven't turned down anything other than things that actually harm birds. We don't do that.
Yeah. We're big on not wasting our time or the client's time, not wasting our money or the client's money on situations where we think our system is not feasible or it's just not going to get the result. Again, being signal based, we have situations where the structure will absorb the signal and before it gets to the bird. And that's where it's actually really nice to have partners like you. Because I can go tell that customer, as much as I would love to take your paycheck, as much as I'd love to take your money, you're not going to be happy with the result. But I got a guy like Tom or a company that sells optical gel or whatever else that probably would be a significantly cheaper and better investment for you. And you've talked about it a couple of times, but just telling the truth, I think, is a big thing.
Yeah, we do get approached by folks who want to buy a product of ours and use it for the wrong reason. We had a gentleman in New York City call us. He wanted to put our flock reflector, 70 of them, on a building in New York to keep the pigeons off the building. And I said, man, sir, you don't want to do that. So we guided him in a different direction. But a lot of other companies don't care. They'll sell them the wrong thing, So we only sell what they need. We guide them. If I don't have something, I'll guide them to the person who does have something. I get asked all the time about other people's product. If it's a good product, I have no problem saying it's a good product. So we're very open. We just want to help people get the job done. And we're open to work with anybody. So
great. Well, you're a big resource for my company and for our clients. I know that. And I really appreciate that. I think if things are going to change, and I believe they're going to, because the market's starting to dictate it now. The governments are coming in on it as well. But ultimately, the peer pressure from the client is what's going to make us create these better solutions for the customer. And I think that comes from partnerships with not just the actual products that are laid down, but the companies that make those products, being committed to working together to ultimately getting the customer the best outcome. And I really just want to say I appreciate the relationship and the partnership that you provide us. I appreciate what you're doing as a pioneer and as a professional in the industry. Tom, if our listeners today want to get a hold of you, they want to get more training set up for their company, or they want to learn more about the products that Flock Free sells, what's the best way for them to do that?
They can email us at admin@flockfree.com, or they can go to our website, which is www.flockfree.com. And I'm available anytime for a phone call, 732-433-4003. Here to help, happy to help. Let's go make some money and do it right.
Amen, brother. Hey, you're awesome. I'll make sure that information gets shared when we post this as well. But Tom, thanks a lot for the time today. Very good information, very good feedback, and we'll look forward to talking to you soon.
Awesome. Always nice talking to you, John.
Awesome. Thanks, Tom.
Have a good day.